But there's something that we don't like about South Korea. Claim a lot of things exactly from South Korea. They say that 공자 is from South Korea. It's Korean, but everybody knows it's Chinese.
한국과 중국 대학생들이 한중 관계에 관한 토론을 벌입니다. 여기서 중국 학생들은 말도 안 되는 주장을 하는데요.
We're going to be talking about Korea's relationship with China and Japan. Korea's history includes the Incheon War and Japanese colonial era during Joseon Dynasty, and this continues to present day. Koreans even say that they should never lose in a sports match against Japan. It's a really deep-rooted cultural sentiment. Today, it actually reported to be China. Strange considering the two countries' history. China had supported Korea during the Japanese invasion in 1592, and they also suffered under Japan during the colonial era. So at the time, these two nations really seemed like they wanted to join forces. According to recent surveys conducted in Korean society, about 18% of Koreans say that they don't like China. Apparently 4 out of 10 Chinese people were also surveyed that didn't like Korea, that Chinese citizens have towards Korea.
Well, I think the relationship between Korea and China is very complicated. In the real life, I didn't really met anybody who actually hates Korea or don't like South Korea. As we talk about South Korea, it would be okay, it's country really close to close to us, and they have development pretty well. We gotta study something from South Korea, but there's something that we don't like about South Korea. Just little thing they claim a lot of things exactly from South Korea.
자신들이 하는 만행을 역으로 한국이 한다고 공격하고 있죠. 김치가 유행하자 중국 것이라고 우기고 한복도 중국 것이라고 우기고 있죠. 심지어 손흥민도 중국인이라고 우기고 있는데요.
Which is not. They say that 공자 is from South Korea. It's Korean, but everybody knows it's Chinese.
공자가 한국인이라는 말은 제가 처음 듣거든요. 어디 공씨인지 공자를 공유로 착각한 것으로 보입니다. 공유는 한국 사람 맞죠?
The general idea and relationship Koreans have towards China right now.
I think that China, we have a little bit of negative feelings for China, and I think that is originating from the China's bans to Korea products. It is true that we have had a lot of damage, and also there were some of the Chinese who have a nationalism, and they actually think that China is superior than the Korea. They have those kind of aspects made Korea to have a negative feelings about China too.
A lot of Korean people, a majority of Korean people, really do not like China. I think it's one of the reasons I think is South Korea and China's geopolitical agenda. A severe conflict is inevitable, and I think another reason, but in some social aspects they are not. He said, some Chinese people hate Koreans because they think that Koreans think that 공자 is Korean, but actually nobody in Korea thinks that 공자 is Korean. We all know that 공자 was Chinese. And I think those are the areas where the geopolitical agenda is spilling into the civil areas. China is ruled by the Chinese Communist Party, and they do not have a democracy, ignores certain human rights or common sense, I think. When they're pushing their geopolitical agenda, it spills into the civil areas. Not only between the governments, but the conflict between the citizens is inevitable.
What are some of the countries that China favors right now?
I think our top one will be Pakistan. We kind of have this special bond between each other. The people there are really nice and kind, and we give them a lot of help, and they cherish our relationship, our friendship.
Well, the relationship between Vietnam and China is like love and hate at the same time. A good relationship with China in terms of economic because China is now one of the biggest trading partner with Vietnam, and it contributes a lot to Vietnamese economic development. But at the same time, we hate the fact that China, they imposed the 9-dash line thing in the South China Sea, and it kind of invade our territory. From the perspective of Chinese, they think that what the government are doing right now is right, and they think that the territory along the 9-dash line belongs to them.
지금 있는 놈들이 더하다고 그렇게 땅덩어리 넓으면서 다른 나라 땅을 계속 노리고 있죠. 소시민의 지하까지 털려고 안달난 졸부를 보는 것 같고요.
Was that, which is the missile system. Can you share your thoughts on this missile defense system?
So for me, I'm 100% against it. First of all, that I don't think it's anything to protect South Korea. It's only like a strategy that the United States used to, to funding what's Chinese government is, developing. I think this thing can also put Korea in like a high risk. Because while the missile is just looking for the Chinese government, it also can see through the Korean government. And I think China and Korea should help each other instead against each other. We kind of have pretty similar culture background. You can go back to maybe thousands of years ago. That's exactly the time the Chinese and Korean relationship rapidly goes down.
And I also agree that China has every right to be angry about it because that's how, military systems work. The purpose of the missile defense system is to shoot down short to mid-range missiles which would be shot from either North Korea or China. People say that if the Third World War breaks out, it's highly possible that it would be around the Korean Peninsula. For the Korean government, means of self-defense, and also the U.S.-Korea alliance is a very big part of the Korean military. So I think, plan or the policy was the right thing to do.
I think that it is just monitoring whether enemies will come or not. So it is not just for attacking the enemy. So I don't think that it will be the big threats for China to.
Goal of setting up that military defense system, the act that they also would have access to the Chinese territorial, which would not only involve the defense necessarily needed to avoid North Korea, but also the military defense system China would be eliminated.
What it's saying is that system also infringes on Chinese military abilities. China also has dozens or probably hundreds of military satellites, but you cannot deny that it has the ability to check on every other nation on Earth. It's just how national defense and the military strategy works. Objectively, the United States is the strongest nation in the world, and China is no offense, but second, but there's I think there is a big gap between the United States and China. The reason that China is still criticized more for this, China does not respect international laws or human rights.
I have a question. You mentioned China doesn't have human rights. Can you explain that to me? Because for me, I'm a Chinese. I have grown in China for almost 20 or 23 years. And in my opinion, I have fully human rights. And for your information, I used to live in the United States. And I didn't see any difference. It's just the only difference is because the culture is different. So the people, the way they're thinking is different. It doesn't mean we don't have human rights.
It's just that Korea has to choose between China and the United States. If we choose China and then we go under China's influence, one day we're gonna be like, one of those regions, massacring people of like other like minority races or something. Well, at least if I was, if I live in the United States, I can criticize about it. But if I live in China, if I criticize about certain things, then, I might be gone for the next couple years. Does that not happen in China? Because, World War II level, human rights violations such as forced labor, concentration camps, torture. There is very hard physical evidence that things are happening though that way in certain parts of China.
중국에는 사회 신용 등급이라는 게 있는데 중국에 대해 비판을 하는 사람은 안 좋은 등급을 받고 비행기표, 기차표도 못 사고 은행 대출도 막히고 학교 진학도 안 되는 등 사회적 불이익을 받고 있죠. 대표적으로 시샤오동이 있고요. 심한 경우 구금되는 등 지도세도 모르게 사라지는 사람들도 있죠.
Most important thing I think is in China there are no opposing party because there's only one party. That's what makes the human rights violation so possible, because can you openly criticize Xi Jinping and not get any harm? Because I have read many reports and articles from the Guardians, the New York Times, that a reporter publicly criticizes Xi Jinping or the Communist Party and then they would disappear, saying that they were tortured or they were locked. And also there are issues like Xinjiang or Uyghur, Tibet. There are a lot of human rights violations happen, and of course you would not have experienced it. You are mainland Chinese and you were born and raised there, but from like an outsider's point of view, I think there are a lot of visible and invisible human rights violations.
Are you interested? Were you? So you were just basically telling about the government who told you what they want you to know. Is it true? Have you ever been to Xinjiang before? I have. It's a really beautiful province and it has developed really well. And people are really nice and they love the party. They're not saying, okay, they're just forcing us to do anything. It's not true. You
But-
only believe like what Americans tell you.
What I read was a UN report about concentration camps in Xinjiang, where there were forced labor and torture, lying. Then I have nothing more to say if you just assume so.
지금 UN 보고서도 믿지 않는 클래스를 보여줬고요. 세뇌를 당한 건지 알면서도 모르는 척 하는 건지 고구마 먹다가 식도에 걸린 듯한 토론이었고요. 네, 오늘은 한국 학생 대 중국 학생 토론이었고요. 다음에 더 유익한 내용으로 돌아오겠습니다. 시청 감사합니다.
Are you interested? Were you? So you were just basically telling about the government who told you what they want you to know. Is it true?